Hello everyone, it's Marc Sabatella from Mastering MuseScore, and welcome to the MuseScore Café. This is my Wednesday series where we talk about some aspect of making music and using MuseScore specifically. And this being the first Wednesday of the month, we're doing our monthly Ask Me Anything session. So that's the deal. You can ask me anything. I come with, some things I could talk about if no one has any questions, but questions are good. Let's talk about what you all want to know. So as I mentioned in the pinned message at the top here, it's really useful if when you ask your question, you use the little emoji button below the comment area to add a little question mark emoji, or if you've got a keyboard that can produce emojis easily, do that. It's not necessary, but it helps make sure that I see your question scroll by, and by all means, if it seems like I've missed a question, you can be helping me out by reminding me that there was a question I missed. I mean, obviously, if I'm answering one question, I'm not going to interrupt it to pick up other questions. And yeah, the audio's doing bad things, but don't worry about that. So yeah, that's the deal. Let's see what kind of questions can come up here, and let me also address. So last week during the music masterclass, anyone who was attending live knows that I discovered yet a new technical problem I can have. It's always a process. I've been doing these things for years now, and I'm always learning something new about how things work. And this time it was clicking a link in the chat that took me to another window and pulled me out, and I didn't know it. So anyhow, I'm learning. We're all learning, right? So so sorry about that. I did post the recording that did exist and a makeup video to cover the stuff that I was talking about when you all couldn't see or hear me. And so that's all there in the community. And we will wrap up the Rise Up and Shine project tomorrow. So that is the story. So still wondering what kind of questions we might have here. So I will just keep talking in some generalities until then. Starting next week also, we will be doing a new thing that to be completely honest, I don't know what it's going to be exactly yet, but I want to study, for myself personally, I want to study Braille music a little bit. And I also want to be helping anyone else who wants to learn Braille music. And I also want to be helping any blind musicians learning to use MuseScore, and hoping that maybe some of them know some Braille that they can help us with. And we're just going to have a little, learning session built around Braille music and accessibility. So that's going to be a little project that we're going to start on next week. So, keep that in mind. If that's something you're interested in, then you'll have opportunities to work on it. All right. So first question is about exporting to Music XML. Which of the 3 file type options? So that's a good question. The default is the fast answer here. So if you go to File and then Export, and then you select Music XML, you will see under File Type actually 3 different options here. There's compressed, uncompressed, and then uncompressed outdated. So let me explain what these are about. The compressed format is one that is basically, so Music XML is essentially a text file. It's it's a text file. I don't know if you've ever opened it in a text editor, but it is just a plain ordinary text file. And it looks kind of like HTML. It's just not. So the compressed version is that zipped. So if you know what zip is, it's a program that you can use to compress files and combine multiple files into a single file that you can then send people. The compressed MXL is really just the uncompressed format zipped. And it is a standard so that all programs that deal with Music XML should be able to handle that. The downside of it is, well, then you can't open it directly in a text editor. So if you're wanting to edit that text directly, you're going to want to pick one of the uncompressed versions rather than the compressed version, just to make it easier to edit. You could still save the compressed version and then open it up in a zip editor and then open up the plain file within that. So between the two other ones, uncompressed and uncompressed outdated, these are identical. It's literally just a question of the file name. If you pick the uncompressed format, it's going to put .musicxml at the end of your file, which is the officially correct file extension for MusiCXML. If you pick the uncompressed outdated format, instead of putting .musicxml at the end of the file, it will, at the end of the file name, it will put .xml. That harkens back to the 80s when MS-DOS could only handle 3-letter extensions, right? So programs that were designed in the 80s, literally programs designed in the 80s will require .xml. They might not be able to handle .musicxml, and therefore you'd need to use that format. It's the same exact file though. So all you have to do, you could pick either of them and then just rename the file to the other. It's really the exact same file. Let me go ahead and pin my chat so that I can get that, make sure I can see it while I'm talking. And I got to do this other fancy thing to make it the right size. There we go. Okay. So that's that. All right, let's go. Hopefully that answers that well enough. And then Joanne, so yeah, absolutely. And I did post that in the community, so hopefully you saw that already. So that I have that video, and I've been posting additional videos. So Monday I posted another video showing my process of putting together the final PBG version of Rise Up and Shine. I worked on the chorus. Yesterday I posted a version of me working on the verse. Today I'll post another version of me working on the bridge, and then tomorrow I can talk about putting it all together. Okay, so there we go. So, and Colleen, I see your comment about the Splanky version. You know, I know you took the piano part that was kind of unreadable because it had gotten messed up over the years and just produced a more readable version of it in MuseScore, and that is fantastic. All right, Rachel, you want to add a copyright information to your score. Sound good here. Okay, so someone must be having sound issues, so that could just be internet issues. All right, so yeah, I'm going to answer that question, Rachel, as soon as I give a quick answer to Graham's question. Is there a reliable way of importing a PDF file? The answer is no. There are many unreliable methods of importing PDF, but a PDF is just a picture of music, and one way or another, it takes AI to look at that picture and somehow sort out what all those dots and lines and things are and turn that into it actually turns it into music XML file. So there are a variety of AI programs out there that can try to take those pictures and turn them into music XML. Within MuseScore, if you go to File, Import PDF, this will send you to MuseScore.com, and there's a program called Autoverus, an open source program that is used over there, and it will run that program to try to import it for you. There are also commercial programs that will attempt to do it. They seldom will do a good enough job to be worth the trouble, because you're going to have all sorts of errors you need to correct by hand. So, people can try to, talk about which of the commercial programs out there they think works best, but basically none of them, in my experience, work any better than just entering the music yourself. All right. So, but yeah, I will be interested in if anyone else wants to nominate what programs you found the least bad, then we can, maybe Graham can check one of those out. All right, so Rachel, you want the copyright at the bottom of the first page. So the way you do this, first of all, that should happen by default. So let's take a look at this. If I create a new score, In the wizard that shows up when you create the new score, let's go ahead and select the treble clef template. Oh, you said choral score. Let's go ahead and make a choral score. We'll make it just be SATB. Oh, I went too fast, right? When I said I wanted to create a new score, I didn't go to the second screen where I could have entered the copyright info. But that's okay. It's not too late. I can go to File, Project, Properties. And when you do that, here you'll see copyright, and there's where you can type copyright and 2023, Marc Sabatella. And because I'm avoiding this issue, the question is, how are we going to get the actual copyright symbol into there? And unfortunately, there's not like a super easy, great way to do that. Different operating systems have different ways of getting that copyright symbol in there. So I'm going to put that question off for the moment. But if I now just hit OK, what we'll see is, hey, there's my copyright on the bottom of the first page. And if I add additional pages, it's not on additional pages. So that should basically just already happen by default if you enter the copyright information, either when you first create the score in the wizard or you go to File, Project, Properties. So let's deal with that copyright symbol thing now, since it's always an issue. I'm going to show you how you can make it happen. And again, on different operating systems, there's different ways of doing this also, but I'm going to show you a way that works on everyone. I'm going to go ahead and just edit the title for a moment, and I'm going to press Shift F2 to open the Special Characters dialog, or I can click the button here that says Insert Special Characters. So while you're editing the text in the Properties panel, you'll see Insert Special Characters. Then I can insert my copyright symbol. Now I can select that copyright symbol and cut it. And now I can go back to File, Project, Properties, and paste it in. And what you'll see is you get that symbol along with a bunch of other junk that you don't need. That's setting the font and all, so just delete that. I think in MuseScore 4.2, whenever that comes out the end of the year, that extra formatting won't be there. So that's how you can get the copyright symbol in. Edit some text in your score, like the title or anything else. Use special characters to insert the copyright, and then copy and paste it. Again, different keyboards have their own ways of doing it. My Chromebook has one special shortcut that I can never remember to give you the copyright symbol. And I know on Windows, it's Alt numeric 0169. On Mac, it's something else. So anyhow, different ways. So Joanne, I will say, if we end up with a lull here where nothing else is going on, I'll talk a little bit more about Rise Up and Shine, but definitely I'll talk more about it tomorrow. I might show one MuseScore specific thing today, but I do want to make sure I cover everything that people want covered here in the questions here. So Steiner's got a question, recap on how to make a template with a predefined score setup with respect to the instruments. On a mission of transferring old handwritten blues band arrangements. All right, and you want vocal, piano, bass, drums, trumpet, sax, and trombone. All right, so that's simple. Let's do this. I'm going to take this score that I already have, because why not? I'm going to press I to get to the instruments list, and I'm going to add what you wanted. We already have a vocal, so let's go ahead and add keyboards. Let's add piano. You know, actually, I'm not going to use this template, this score here, because this score was created from a template that might have some custom settings. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a new score, and we'll add the instruments you want. So from the choral section, we want, oh, no, not template. I want to choose instruments. From the vocal section, we will add voice. From keyboards, we add piano. From strings plucked, we'll say bass guitar, drum set, and then brass, trumpet, woodwinds, an alto sax, tenor sax, a bari sax, and brass trombone. Now, I've set those instruments, and MuseScore is going to add them in orchestral ordering, which is a little odd in that it's going to have drum set above piano, because in orchestras, percussion usually does appear above piano. So I'm going to change this from orchestral ordering to jazz combo or rock band, depending on which we think. Let's see if rock band does good things. It puts voice, then drums, and then all the horns. If that's what you want, go for it. The jazz one is going to put the voice, then the horns, and then the rhythm section. Yeah, I'm going to go with that one. You can certainly customize this order also. For instance, if you decide you want the trumpet down with the trombone rather than above the saxes, which makes total sense to me. I have no idea why it's defaulting that way. Let's move the trumpet down. I select it, and then I click the down arrow to get it down where the trombone is, and everything else is as I want. All right, so here's my score. Now, you can customize anything else about the score you want, headers and footers. So if you want some special header and footer, we can go to Format, Style, Header, Footer, and put in, on the header, put, I don't know, blues in the middle. And the footer's got the copyright info, etc. You put in whatever information you want here. You can make any other style customizations here. Like if you want to use a font other than Leland, you want to use the Petaluma font, say. You can set that up here. You can make all of your style adjustments here. Once you have the score, though, set up the way you want, the actual process of making the template, dead simple. I'm going to hit Control-S to save my score. And instead of saving to my scores folder, MuseScore 4 scores, I'm going to go up a level to the MuseScore 4 folder. And we'll wait while my system pages it in because it's getting it from Google Drive and seems to want to be slow about it. Instead of my scores folder, I'm just going to save it to my templates folder. And now I can call this Blues Band. And this process is essentially identical in MuseScore 3 and MuseScore 4. Everything that I've talked about so far is essentially identical, except for maybe the precise location of a button to press. But the basic process is nothing I've talked about is any different. Okay, so now that it's there, if I go to create a new score, when I create the new score, if I now say create from template, under my templates, I will now see, oh, okay, here's the thing. I named the file Blues Band, but I didn't put a title on the score. My bad. This is it here, the one that just says untitled score. So let's fix that. I want to get back to my Blues Band score. Did I close it? Blues Band. Here's my Blues Band score. And I need to actually name this thing. So I'm going to call it Blues Band. And also in File Project Properties, I will call it Blues Band. To be honest, I'm never sure which one of those it's going to use. So let's just play it safe and use them both. And make sure they both say Blues Band. So the file name says Blues Band, the title printed on the score says Blues Band, and project properties all say Blues Band. So now when I go to create a new score and go to look at create from template, under my templates, I will see Blues Band there. And when I select it and hit OK, I now have a score that's set up exactly the way I had it set up. So that's all there is to it. Set up everything you like and then just save it to your templates folder. That's all there is to it. All right. So here we go. So Rachel seconding the template question, and hopefully then that answered for both of you. Let me move on. Dave is wondering about selecting a small group of bars over a few staves. Okay, so Dave, I know exactly what you're talking about. I don't know how to reproduce that. So It would be great if you have a particular score that does, if you would post that. I think there might be an open issue about it in MuseScore, but there are certain situations where if you go to select a measure and then say shift click these three measures, what you should get is a box around all three of those measures. But sometimes the box just displays all wonky. That's the only way I can describe it. Sometimes, depending on what's going on in the music you're trying to select, the display just gets crazy. And so the selection is actually working fine. The blue box is just displayed wrong. And you'll know that the selection is working right because the notes themselves will only be blue within the staves you've selected, but the box will extend to the bottom of the score or to some other random location. So yeah, there's certain, and I don't know if anyone has investigated to know exactly what the circumstances are where it happens, but I think many of us have seen it happen. So we all believe it happens, but I just don't know if anyone has found the exact steps to reproduce it. So in any case, Dave, if you got those, if you've got such a case, maybe post it in the community as a reminder to me, because I think maybe there's an issue on GitHub already. If not, then we should definitely open one. All right, so Christopher is asking, okay, looking at the aux send slider. Unable to get screen reader feedback on it. So I have to say that, yeah, I haven't tried that. So one thing, yeah, I haven't experimented with screen reader on, actually, let me get that back. I haven't experimented with screen reader feedback specifically on that. So let me restore that to its default location. Restore the default layout. All right. So what I can tell you is those aux sends here, there is a dial. Ideally, there would also be a spin box for it. But there isn't, and maybe that's the issue. Maybe there just needs to be a spin box added. So Christopher, I'm guessing that if the screen reader isn't supporting it, that's just a bug that needs to be reported so it can be dealt with. It's also possible that different screen readers will handle that differently. There are certain bugs right now that only affect JAWS, for instance, and everything else works fine. And there's actually someone from, what's it called? Freedom Scientific. They're the makers of JAWS. There's actually someone from Freedom Scientific actually working on fixing some of the JAWS issues right now. I don't mean fixing it in JAWS. I mean, he's actually going into the MuseScore source code and getting ready to submit some changes to help MuseScore support JAWS better. So it could be that switching to a different screen reader will help you with that. And if not, then we should definitely submit an issue to GitHub. So again, follow up with me on the community about that as a reminder that that's something I need to then check into to see what's in, see what's already in GitHub about that. Because I don't that the aux send is too new. I'm pretty sure there's nothing already reported on GitHub. So PlayScore 2 is what Elizabeth has recommended as her least problematic program for importing PDFs. And I've heard other people recommend that one, but I can't keep them all straight. There's PhotoScore, there's PlayScore, there's a bunch of these programs out there, and I can never remember which ones have gotten recommended. So Graham is asking, is the copyright symbol obligatory? So unfortunately, this is something that differs from country to country. What I can tell you is that no copyright message at all is obligatory. There's a thing called the Berne Convention, which was a treaty signed by almost every country in the world. The United States was actually one of the last ones to join this, like 50 years ago, 40 years ago. But most countries have been part of it for like 100 years. And according to the Berne Convention, you don't need a copyright message. You don't need to register your copyright. You don't need to do anything. The moment you set down your music in what's called tangible form, such as a computer file or a print or a tape recording or whatever else, the moment you have something that you can show someone else to say, hey, I wrote this thing, it's not just in your head, you own the copyright to it. Everything else is just gravy. It's helping spread the word that, hey, please don't steal this because I wrote it. So no, the copyright symbol isn't necessary in any way. There are minimum standards for what you would need to show in order to prove that someone willfully infringed your copyright, if it ever comes down to that, because then there could be additional penalties. It's always illegal to steal your copyrighted work, but if someone can say, hey, well, I didn't know it was copyrighted, they'll get off with a slap on the wrist and damages only. In other words, whatever money they made from it, they'll have to turn over to you, but they might not get a punitive award on top of that. I mean, you might not get, some additional award on top of just the damages, unless there's a copyright message there. Now, whether that copyright message needs to have the copyright symbol, that's going to just depend on the specific situation. There is no specific universal law about that. It's going to be each country handles it differently. Each court handles it differently. Each case comes up. How prominent was that copyright message? Was the absence of the copyright symbol itself confusing to the person? But realistically, no, is the short answer to that. But that background is useful. All right. So Dave's asking about reducing space for the mixer. And yeah, let me actually show you. I have all this stuff showing right now. This is my demo. Actually, I think the customizations I'm making right now are global. Some customizations you can create a custom workspace, and those customizations only apply to that workspace. But I think what I'm going to show you right now only is global. But in any case, I'll show you what I do. I personally, the sliders are pretty and all, but they're a big waste of space to me. I would much rather just have a numeric setting for the volume. Takes less space and is easier for me to do precisely. So in the ... menu for the mixer, I come down to View and I enable volume, and that gives me the actual numeric box for volume. But then I can come in and disable the fader. Now suddenly I got a whole lot less room being taken up, right? I could also, if I wanted, hide the aux sends, hide pan, you can do things like that, and that will make a difference. Now you can also adjust the size of this just by dragging, but if you drag this thing, bigger, you just get wasted space. If you drag smaller, you get this situation where you have to scroll to see everything. So that is certainly an option also, is to just drag this thing to the size you want. You can also undock it, and then when it's undocked, it defaults to some other size. Oh, I just docked it on the top now. But yeah, you can play with different settings like that if you want. But then I usually just, to get everything back where it was, you can just say restore the default layout, and that puts the mixer back at its default size and position. It doesn't reset those adjustments, right? Reset the default layout doesn't undo the changes I made in that ... menu. So in any case, those are the things you can do to fiddle with the size. And this is still, I would say, a work in progress. There's a lot that's been improved about the mixer, in particular the accessibility, even though the aux send button is apparently not reading. At least you can navigate these buttons. In MuseScore 3, you couldn't navigate the mixer at all with keyboard, and there was no screen reader feedback if you clicked on it. So this is an improved interface as far as accessibility concerned, and of course there's a lot of new controls, like individual controls for the reverb and other effects per channel. Lots of nice improvements in here, but definitely still a work in progress. All right. Okay, so Dave viola should sound like a viola and does to me. So I would post a particular score you're having a problem with, and we can listen to it and see if there's something going on. But for me, anyhow, I mean, we listen to the Music Masterclass theme music every week, and it sounds like a viola to me in there. And question about the viola, the violins. Relabel the violin. Oh yeah. So if you rearrange instruments, you'll have to rename them yourself. The naming, the automatic numbering of the instruments, like when you add multiple violins to a score, it'll number them: violin, violin 2, violin 3, etc. Violin 1, 2, and 3. It names them as you add them. If you then rearrange them, it would be up to you to rename them. It doesn't like look at the number and then try to change that for you. So if you want to rearrange the parts, you would have to rename them to make that happen. All right. So let's bring up Christopher Bartlett's score here, and oh yeah. So this is so now this is the very thing that caused me to mess up before. So I'm gonna. Oh no, this is just a file to download. So this isn't gonna mess me up. I'm gonna make sure I download the score from in here. Download. And then I can open it up within MuseScore, and we can listen to the viola, but also listen to whatever else is going on and talk about a couple other things. So let me bring back my pinned chat. Okay, so then the aux send slider is new with 4.1. So I would definitely recommend, Dave, go to the MuseScore 4 course and watch the video on using effects. But the aux send is basically, it's something that all physical mixers have. Well, not all of them, all decent ones have. It's a way of controlling how much reverb or whatever other effect is applied to each instrument. So the aux send here says, I want the trumpet to have that much reverb, I want the alto sax to have that much reverb, and et cetera down the line. So each instrument is going to have some particular amount of reverb applied, and this is how you control how much of that channel is sent to the auxiliary effect unit. That's the terminology that's been with us for decades. So anyhow, Christopher, I realize your question is about the mixture channel, but while we have it up, we can listen to the viola, is I guess what I'm saying, and see to what extent it sounds like a duck. So let's just do that real quick. That sounds like a viola to me. All right. So then the question is about the mixer. So let's see what we have in here. I see in the mixer a clarinet, violin 1 solo, viola solo, cello solo. Oh, there's a metronome channel that appears that you have set to violin 1. That wouldn't normally be the case. So I'm guessing that you might, because the normal metronome sound, I don't know, what is the normal metronome sound? Let's look at one of my that blues band score I just created and take a look at it in the mixer. So that metronome channel should just say MS Basic as its sound. So somehow it appears you have changed your metronome to be violin 1. And so let's change it back to MS Basic. And so reading left to right, we have clarinet, violin, viola, cello, metronome, and then aux 1, and then master. Now, aux 1 is appearing only because I have previously enabled it in that ... menu. So I went to view and enabled. No, the aux send 1 is here, but then aux channel 1 is here. And so also getting back to Dave's question about what is this aux business about, the aux send controls how much reverb gets sent to the auxiliary effect unit. Then the aux channel is where you control what actually happens in. That is the auxiliary effect unit. This is where you control what it is, whether it's reverb or something else. And it's also where you can control the overall volume of the reverb globally. So if you've enabled this, I think by default in MuseScore 4.1, you'll see the aux send listed, but you won't see the aux1 channel. I've actually forgotten now what the defaults are because I keep fiddling with them. But hopefully, Christopher, that that answers your question. Extraneous channel. So I guess that's either it was the metronome or the auxiliary that is the channel there, and that's my guess because that's all I'm seeing there. All right. So Christopher, you're saying NVDA isn't reading that slider, and that's good information. I'm actually a little curious right now, so let's do this. Let's do this. Let me get my hands dirty a little bit, open up my Linux terminal, and start Orca.
Screen reader on.
Y'all hear that? Screen reader on. Turn up my volume a little. If I click in the volume box, it takes actually the screen. It takes Orca a minute to start actually reading. Come on, Orca, start reading. Oh no, Orca's not going to read it. Sorry, I'm not going to test this because I like when I have the thing going where you can see my keyboard keystrokes, that prevents Orca from working. And
normal mode, note B flat for Schwarger.
Never mind. Okay, now it's working because the keystroke, it killed the keystroke thing. All right. So
pan slider 0.
There's the pan slider.
Reverb push button. Aux send slider 10. 11. 12. 13.
Okay, so for me, the aux send slider is working using Orca. So it's good to know it's not working with NVDA. It would be nice to know with other screen readers what the situation is. But anyhow, unfortunately, accessibility is as much of an art as a science, and getting all the different screen readers to read every control is annoyingly difficult. So if we now know aux send doesn't read with NVDA, let's make an issue for it. So Elizabeth is asking what other screen readers there are besides JAWS, NVDA, VoiceOver, and Orca. Yeah, you're missing one, actually, that's in some ways the one MuseScore supports best right now, and that's Narrator. Narrator is what comes with Windows, of course. I mean, I say of course because you probably know that. Narrator comes with Windows, and originally it really had a bad rap as not being very good, but it's gotten better over the years, and at this point, people that have done comparisons are telling me that Narrator probably works better with MuseScore than anything else. So that's that. But there's always trade-offs. Okay, so let's see what else do I got here. Love one of these for the volume slider as well. Okay, so Christopher, I saw that comment there, and unfortunately that was a little bit ago, so I'm not sure what it applied to specifically. All right. Are the settings related to the workspace? And I think I pretty much answered that, Chris. No, the setting, all these customizations that I'm making in the mixer, even if I changed workspaces right now, if I changed
dialog, use workspaces to save different arrangements of the MuseScore interface demo.
I'm going to kill Orca at this point because it has served its purpose.
Screen reader off.
All right. I think there's a way to pause Orca or something, but I never remember how. So I've switched to a different workspace now, but if I open the mixer, it still has those same customizations, removing the slider, etc. So that feels like something that probably should be part of the workspace. I can just tell you what happened. The workspace code was written long before this mixer was designed, and so the workspace code does what it does. New features that were added, like all those customizations to the mixer, just never got retrofitted into the workspace code. So someone would have to open an issue on GitHub to request that, but I think it's a completely valid request. So, Dave, no, that was viola that I was playing. So let's listen to it again. Here's viola. This is a viola. It sounds like a viola to me. And I've got like the piece that I always use as a demonstration for orchestra music, my composition Dusk, starts right off with a viola solo. Well, there's an opening trumpet duet, and then there's a viola solo with harp accompaniment. And to me, it sounds wonderful. It sounds very much like the actual orchestra recording that I have of that piece. So, yeah, Dave, the sends can go anywhere in MuseScore also. So the sends, you have two different send channels. So the send is right now set to reverb, but all I'd have to do is select something else other than reverb in the drop-down list here in the aux channel. I only have reverb installed right now, but if you've got different VST effects going, you can select any VST effect that you have available to you can be selected for use in that aux channel. So, all right. So let's see what else we got here. So Christopher's seeing channel 0, 2, and 3, but not 1. So I don't actually know how the channels get read and numbered, but they should have names. Clarinet in B flat, violin, viola. To be honest, I haven't played with the navigation with screen reader enough to know exactly how that all works, but let's take that part offline. If you post about that either in the forum on musescore.org or in the community here, let's try to sort out exactly what's going on there, because it might be a little more of a project to get that deep into there. Okay, and now Dave is bringing up a really good point. When you just click a note individually, it plays it differently than how it's going to play in real life. That's about all I can say. It plays it differently than how it's going to play it in real life, because Muse sounds depends on context. And when you play it, when you just click a note, it's absent the context. So it's playing a much rawer version of the sample without whatever else normally goes on in Muse sounds. So often clicking a note plays it with a less ideal sound, I guess, than how it will sound when you actually play it. And that's true of that's true of most instruments. It's not terrible sounds, but that's a clarinet, right? These are all decent sounds. You know, they're not terrible sounds, but it's just better in the actual context there. So Christopher is saying he just sees clarinet, viola, and cello. That's weird, because I definitely have the violin in there too. But I am curious now if I just try navigating here. So let me click in the volume channel, and I'm going to use the down arrow. Oh, I forget how to. Okay, the mute, solo, drop down, drop down, drop down, aux sends. So it looks like down arrow is just moving within a channel. I forget how to move to, is it tab then? Yeah, tab moves me to the next channel, and it's definitely the violin channel. So the violin channel should have been next when I tabbed to it, then viola, then cello, then metronome, then aux 1, and then master. So that should be the right order. But yeah, I'd have to fire it up with NVDA specifically to understand, because obviously I'm hearing something different with Orca than you are anyhow. So I do want to find out, though. Okay, so I saw Steiner's question. I don't want to come back to that, and it looks like maybe that's the only thing I've missed. So let's come back to that. Best, quickest way to control the tempo of the playback. Oh, yes. Okay. So this is something that was a bit of an oversight, and then a last-minute attempt to fix. That's also a work in progress. Basically, so the playback panel will show you the current tempo for the score, but it doesn't have a way to override it. So if you want to play this score differently than the actual marked tempo, so certainly if you want to change the tempo for the score, you would actually select that tempo marking, go to properties, and then change that value there to from 114 beats per minute to whatever you want it to be. But if you want the actual tempo for the score to stay 114 and you just want to temporarily override it, here's what you do. In MuseScore 3, this was the play panel, right? It was never a control on the toolbar. It was always something you had to go hunt down and find. Well, that's the case in MuseScore 4 also. You just have to hunt somewhere different. What we're going to do is grab the little docking icon next to the playback toolbar and drag that puppy off of the toolbar. Now we have a floating window, very much like the playback toolbar, like the play panel in MuseScore 3, and it has that tempo slider. So that is how you do it. You drag that docking icon off of the toolbar to get that panel to float. When you do that, you will then have that slider. It's being proposed and being worked on how we can maybe turn the display of the tempo into a control of some kind. It's a little complicated because this is displaying an actual tempo as it should, but that slider is working in percentages as it should, because that slider is going to slow down or speed up the entire score even within the tempo changes that are within the score. And it's a little not clear how that would interact with the display on the slider, but someone will figure it out and get it happening at some point. But for now, anyhow, that's what you do. Undock that playback toolbar, and then you'll have that slider. Let's see. Linking staves to mixer channels. Oh yeah, so this is a good question about the link between the score and the mixer channel. And right now, if you select something in the score, it works in the instruments. Like if we look at the instruments panel on the left, when I select something on the violin, it shows me violin. If I select something in viola, it shows me viola. If I select multiple staves in the score, it selects one of them. But none of that is reflected in the mixer. So really, you just, as far as I know, you just have to go by the names and the ordering of things. So normally when you add the things, these names are set by MuseScore and you don't mess with them. If you've been playing games renaming things in the instruments panel, like if you, instead of saying clarinet in B flat, you want to rename that thing to be clarinet in B. We'll just call it B because, maybe we're German. It's renamed now in the score, renamed in the instrument panel, but unfortunately it remains clarinet and B flat in the mixer. And that's something that is, also being discussed for, how there might be additional controls for those namings. But what you should be able to rely on is the one-to-one correspondence. If I move that clarinet below the strings, interesting, it didn't rearrange the mixer, did it? Didn't rearrange the mixer. Oh yeah, once you close the mixer and reopen it, now the clarinet is down there. So yeah, that's what I thought was the case. So the order of channels in the mixer should reflect the order in the instruments panel. And assuming you aren't doing something really crazy with your renaming, you're sticking with something related to the original name, it should be pretty obvious from the naming as well. So Elizabeth's saying that with VoiceOver, reading the sliders can't adjust. So, well, it reads the sliders, you can't adjust. So yeah, that's good to know. For me, with Orca, well, the thing is that the screen reader shouldn't affect the keyboard control at all. I can adjust sliders even with the screen reader turned off. I just have to get my keyboard focus onto it, and then left and right arrow adjust the slide. Maybe that's not clear. Left and right cursor keys are what adjust the sliders, even though we might think of a slider as a vertical control, because the up and down arrows move you from field to field, left and right are what adjust the sliders. And that applies both for the kind of circular knobs like pan and aux sends are, as well as the vertical slider like the volume slider. So yeah, it should be the case that with focus on the slider, left and right will do that. So there you go. Floating panels sometimes disappear. And yeah, so you may have noticed that happen when I tried detaching my mixer and then dragging my mixer around. Every once in a while, it will just disappear. So this is why I did at some point went to View, Restore the Default Layout. That will put all the panels back where they go. So, Christopher closed and reopened. So that must be what happened. So you must have added instruments and then they didn't show up in the mixer right away, or you rearranged them. Because actually, normally if you add an instrument, I think adding instruments does show up right away, but let's find out. Let's add a flute. Add a flute. Yeah, for me, adding the flute shows up right away, but maybe it's not in the tab order right away. Closing it and reopening does it, though. So, creating custom palettes, sure, no problem. Let's go back to my demo workspace so I don't mess up my current custom palettes. So I'm in my demo workspace. Let's go over to the palettes. So let's say that I've decided, I want to have whatever, some special, I don't even know what we're going to customize here. I'll show you something more customized because someone just asked about this. I'm going to add an accent mark to this middle C here by pressing Shift V. And when I do that, we see the accent mark below. Well, in percussion music, it's common to put the articulations always above. Articulations normally go on the note head side, but in percussion music, it's common to put all the accents and other things above so that sticking information can go below. So what we're going to do is we're going to force that accent marking above. I'll go to properties and set it above. And now that I've got this custom accent, let's add that to a palette. I'm going to create a new palette. First of all, you don't have to create a new palette. You can just open the existing articulations palette and I can add this here. But I'm going to create a new palette for it so that I can keep straight, which is the drum version of this. And I'm going to call this percussion. So now I've got myself a percussion palette. To get that accent mark there, I'm going to hold Control and Shift, and I'm going to drag that accent marking into the palette. And you'll see the cursor change from the kind of circle with a slash through it saying, nope, can't drop here. When you find the right place to drop, the cursor changes to a plus. The details of that depend on your operating system. And then you release, and now I've got that plus. And now I've got that in my palette. So now I can select another note and click that accent mark, and it gives me that special customized version of the accent that always displays above the staff. So whatever you have in your score, you've customized in whatever way, Control, Shift, drag. You can also add things like, for instance, remember that copyright symbol? Check this out. I'm going to re-edit that bit of, no. Here's how we're going to do it. I'm going to re-edit this text, and I will open that special characters palette again with Shift F2. And now I can just drag that copyright symbol into my palette. Not that percussion is a reasonable palette for it, but the point is you don't need Control Shift when dragging from special characters. Now, pay attention to this. As I'm dragging, notice that I still can't drop, and you might think, hey, it doesn't work. Yeah, I've described this before as being finicky. There's a place where you can drop it, and you just got to move around. Oh, there it is, right? So there's like some places within the palette where it seems like it wants to allow you to drop, and a whole lot of places where it doesn't, and it's finicky. That's all I can say. And then if I try that again, like the next time, it might work easier. It's just I don't know what goes on with that, but I would say that's pretty much always been the case with this palette customization. Sometimes you'll drag something, especially in MuseScore 3, a lot. You would try to drag something from one palette to another, and it would just disappear entirely. And that was never good. There's fewer reports of that in MuseScore 4, but more reports of the finickiness of drag and drop, of not being able to drop it. So in any case, just be a little patient when you drag and drop. Okay, so, and since it's likely to come up, no, I don't know of any way to customize, to create a custom palette using keyboard and screen reader only. It's definitely on the radar as something that we'd like to see a way to make happen. And there's been some ideas about that, but so far, not any specific progress on that. All right, so what else we get here? All right, so I mentioned before that if there was a lull, which there is at the moment, I am going to show you something about my Rise Up and Shine score. So let's pull that up for a second here. Where is it? I want to show you something that I did here. In setting up this score, so this isn't necessarily done, and I'll talk about it more tomorrow in Music Masterclass, but I didn't end up changing a whole lot about the style settings or anything for this. I was wondering, well, there's not really a PVG template or anything, and if there was, what style settings would be any different? But here's one. It's common in this music to put the word refrain or chorus or verse in kind of a large all caps typeface there. And when I think about what these things are, they are basically rehearsal marks. They serve the same function as rehearsal marks. So I wanted to add that as a rehearsal mark. So what I did is, let me come over to another score now. If I add a rehearsal mark to Christopher's score here, select something, press Control M, I'll get a box where I can type refrain, and it's large, and I typed it all caps, and it's boldface like I want, but it has that box around it. So what I want to do is go to the Properties panel, and then under the More section here, I can set the frame to none. And now there's no frame. And then I can also click the ... and say Save as Default Style. So that now, if I go add another rehearsal mark over here that says Verse, it shows up the same way. If I decide that that's a little too big, which I think I did, I knocked it down to 12 and then also said Save as Default. So notice the 12 affected only the verse, but as soon as I say Save as Default Style, now refrain gets updated as well. So in my version of this Rise Up and Shine, I think that might have been really the only... I think I made the chord symbols slightly bigger than they were by default. I made the coda and senyo bigger than they were by default, and made the refrain, made the rehearsal marks not be boxed and a little smaller than they were by default. And I think those might have been the only style changes. And then this, to me, would be a reasonable PVG template, but we'll continue to talk about that. So, Graham, what's wrong with having a box? Nothing is wrong with having a box. It's a style thing. And in most music, when there's rehearsal letters, these rehearsal marks are usually just single letters, A, B, C, and we put a box around them. However, in PVG, piano, vocal, guitar, sheet music, it's pretty common to see that kind of stuff indicated without that. And so, in fact, here's an example. No, that's not an example. That's an example of something else. Do I have an example handy? Oh, Graham, you're the one who mentioned this. So let's actually talk about this. So here, I don't see any examples of single syllables divided across multiple notes. I would be looking for the syllable son as a melisma, and the only place where I saw anything like that is a couple places where that syllable was across a tied note, but it's not divided up, son, nor would you expect it to be on a tied note. So anyhow, this is the score that you were talking about, but I'm still struggling to find a place where a single syllable is divided between multiple notes in here, because yeah, I just don't see that. The single syllables seem like they are all combined in one place, as I expect. But in any case, yeah, if you look around at some published piano, vocal, guitar, sheet music, you'll often see things like refrain, chorus, roadmap, things like that, just set in large, bold type without a box. And so I'm trying to emulate that look. In particular, the particular publisher that we're submitting to does it that way. Dave's got a pause over several instruments. Oh, by pause, you specifically mean a fermata, right? Because the word pause is a little overloaded in music. Some people use it to mean the word rest, but you're specifically meaning under the breaths and pauses palette, which I need to add to this workspace because I haven't added it in this workspace. So let's do it. So in the breaths and pauses, the fermatas. So the way you would do that, I guess, is if you add the fermata to multiple parts like this, and it's added in both. First of all, for playback purposes, you shouldn't have to change the length for all of them, I think it should be the case the longest one wins. But I don't know that for a fact, so let's find out. Set that to 2. We'll set it to 400%. Oh, maybe if you're trying to make it shorter, maybe that's the deal. So what I would do is select them both at the same time. If you have them both selected at the same time, then in principle, click one, control click the other. In principle now, I should be able to set the time stretch for both of them at the same time. So as long as you have multiple items selected, you should be able to control the properties for all of them together. Now, what can be complicated is if they're not on the same beat, like one of them is a half note and one of them's 2 quarters, and you're putting the fermata on the second quarter. Things get dicey in those cases. MuseScore has never handled that particularly well. So yeah, there's weirdnesses that can show up in those cases. All right. I've caught up. I showed you something else that I wanted to show you. So I'm going to call this good, and we're going to hear some MuseScore Café theme music. I want to thank everyone, as always, for being here. Thanks for the questions and the comments and everything. So tomorrow, we'll talk more about that Rise and Shine music. We'll look at some of the submissions from different people, talk about choices made and how choices can be made differently. And, because there's no right and wrong about a lot of this stuff. It's how you want to do things, right? It's a creative act like anything else. So we'll talk more about the final versions of, how to put everything we put together to create that piano, vocal, guitar music. And then keep your eyes open. I'll be posting sometime in the next day or two a little more information about this project that I have in mind for Braille and accessibility, and post more about it next week. But actually, the posting that I want to do is outside the MuseScore community. I want to bring in some people from other places who aren't necessarily already part of the community. So that's the show for today. And next week, we'll talk about some other topic that feels like we want to talk about it. And just keep doing what we're doing. So thanks, everyone, and I will see you next time.